Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we dive in with entrepreneurs about their journey, starting from the dream all the way through to getting their businesses up and off the ground. And today, from Proactive, Janae, can you just tell us what the name of your business is? It's Proactive Prevention, I believe?
Yes, it's Proactive Prevention. And we basically help serve people giving relief through professional handyman and preventative maintenance services using efficient, proactive solutions for their home and property maintenance needs inside and out.
So glad to have you join us, Janae. I'd love to start with just tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you became a business owner, and then we'll get into some of your story of how you went down that path.
Okay, well, I'll pull it back a lot further. Of course, in my 20s, I owned a mortgage company. And then, of course, we moved to Chicago and I homeschooled my kids. So I homeschooled them all three of them all the way into graduation. And I'm like, I need something to do. Once my youngest one, I kept telling my husband he was building his business and working full time at Hazelden. And so I'm like, we could do a lot more with this company. I prescribe to E-Myth Revisit with Michael Gerber. So yeah. I'm like, you're just doing technician work. You're not building a business. And so basically he had two jobs, which was his business, quote unquote, and then working at Hazelden. And it just grew because we were always big in customer service. And so it just grew and he's like, I can't handle it. I'm like, look, let's build this company. Let's build it. And so in 2019, I ended up joining my husband and basically helping him build the company.
This isn't your first rodeo. So in your early years, you owned a mortgage company. Then you took a little bit of time off to really focus on your kids and help get them through school. And then you saw your husband was trying to both work a full-time job and have this side business. And you said, hey, I need something to do. We're actually going to build this like a real business and not a little side hobby for a little extra cash. And that started about 5 years ago?
Yes.
Question for you. Did you always know you wanted to become a business owner again? Or was this something that you just opportunistically saw in front of you when you were looking for what you wanted to do in the next stage of your life?
No, this is something I always wanted to do. I'm like, well, if we don't do this, I'm going to build something. My dad did insurance and he did mortgage and he just pulled me in and said, come on. And so I basically took off from there.
So you got an early education in how to drum up your own business and sort of grow it from there. And sounds like you transitioned that into a mortgage brokerage business until you took some time off. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what I think is interesting about your story is you've got a story in your family of one person in your family starting a side business and getting to the point of complete overwhelm with it while still trying to do the other thing. And you had to make a decision at that point. What do you do here? Do you shut it down? Do you keep going as is and generate a little extra cash? Or do you double down and do something bigger with it? So can you walk us through how you and your husband made that decision?
Yeah. So if he would have stayed at his job, I don't think he would be I didn't think he would be that happy. And you don't have control over your financial future. But one thing about business is you have to, it's not for everybody. It is so much hard work. It is a lot of hard work. And so again, it's nothing wrong with being a technician and working and owning your job. But it is rewarding with the hard work to build the business. So I'm saying that to say is we had the decision to, do he continue to work his job and stop his business? And well, his technician business, his other job. And I would say that for him, I was like, well, it just makes sense to build. It just makes sense to build and, not work the job. The good news is the job ended up hiring our company to do
Right
the
on.
maintenance for them. So that was good. And that opened up a lot of more areas where we saw handyman could go and where it could take us. But it was being able to have that freedom. And I also would get something I want to do, which is I like building things. And so I got to, see that opportunity and like, let's do it together. Because I knew that business took a lot of work. And if he would have kept working his job and I would have built something else, it would just been a lot harder. Even though
Yeah,
building a business with your husband is hard also.
that's a
Together.
different kind of hard, right? Well,
Right.
I want to put a pin in that and come back to it because you
Mhm.
said something interesting just a minute ago about when you made the transition, your husband was able to turn his job into something where his old company then engaged your business to hire him back to do some of the things that he was doing before for them. So, can you talk about that? That is an interesting potential solution for some people to say, hey, maybe you don't fully quit your job. Maybe what you say is, hey, I'm starting this business, but I'm happy to still do some of these things if you want to contract with us. So tell us how that came about. Was that something
Yeah.
you initiated or they initiated?
Um, so I think my husband initiated with his boss. I mean, he was good at what he's good. He is very good at what he does. He's an excellent technician. Um, and so we wrote up a contract and so he knew what they needed. And with any business, you need to know what your customer needs and what your customer wants. And if you can fulfill it to the best of your ability and continue to build systems to fulfill it. That was another week. But um, so he was able to fulfill their need and we wrote up a contract and they've been with us even now. They're still with us. So they've
So,
been with us to the beginning.
yeah, I'm curious. Did he walk into his boss's office and say, hey, I'm going to be leaving. Here's a contract. Or did he walk into his boss's office, say, here's what's going on. Here's what I'd be interested in doing. And then some of the later dominoes ended up turning into a contract.
Honestly, I don't know. I know that he did put in his his month notice, and let him know. And then he also did talk to his boss and said, look, this is what I'm doing. Um, and his boss was like, well, that was, his boss was honest and said, well, good, because you're capped at the highest salary right now. You're capped, we can't offer you anything else. So this may be a good direction. And, he was supposed to be there temporary until they found someone and had a contract, but they really couldn't find anyone as good as what he did. So we just basically we kept the contract.
That's interesting. So that's just a great example of corporate bureaucracy, right? They capped him out for the way that their comp structure worked. And so him going off and starting his own business was the way they could pay him differently, either to pay him more for working less hours or something to that effect.
Yeah. Actually,
Well,
yeah.
that was a brilliant way to get a little jump start on the business. So tell us about what you did from there, Janae. I'm curious. So you make this decision for him to leave his job, for you to double down on building this business that's helping people maintain, especially proactively, all the things going on in their homes. What did you do to get the word out? What did you think about? What did you build in terms of a business plan to think about investing in growing this thing?
So we started with I knew, again, like I said, I'm a big advocate of E-Myth Revisit with Michael Gerber. And I knew, like, doing this a second time around, like um I was we need a coach. We definitely need a business coach. There's no way we can do it without a business coach. Because the first business in the mortgage business, I did it, but it's so many things that I can look back at. It eventually closed. I eventually I so-called sold it, but it wasn't strong. And yeah, so it closed. We had to close it. Just being honest, we had to close it. I wouldn't say, yeah, there was a lot of areas. But now, so I knew coming back in and building a business again, there was one good news. I was like, okay, if you made $1 million the first time and you lost it, you know what you did to make it. And so studies show when it's your second time around, you'll be a lot more successful because you know what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And so I we end up calling eMyth and we were like, okay, we're ready to get started. We had money in our 401k. And eMyth actually recommended us to you, to guidance. To
Oh, wow.
guidance and told us, because we were like, we had to have so much money, but it was for him a second job. And so he didn't run it like a business. His bank accounts were all off. It was just not a business at all. Again, for structurally. And so we were like, okay, how do we take this 401k money, put it over? So we was like, okay, well, if we take out the 401k, then that will cost us money with fees and put it in the business. And how do we do that? So our eMyth coach, again, the eMyth had recommended you guys. And that's when we called and got all the everything situated and how to do it. You guys were so very wonderful, like just really setting everything up and just making everything so easy and streamlined. And then starting and setting up, working with the coach and with the eMyth coaching and the leadership module and going through all the different modules. And so we, again, from a person that ran a business before and I would say failed at a business in my 20s, or had to close it down, it just made everything with both angles, just areas, it made everything easy, streamlined, and just being able to know, okay, what do I need to do to build it? How do I need to do all the steps I needed to take in place? And so that made everything, that helped out a lot. And I'm still with eMyth, and of course I'm still with you guys. Um, and I think that's really the help, one of those core things that I know I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have eMyth and guidance.
That's so interesting. So your first thought when you're thinking, okay, we're gonna invest in this business and try and grow it is we got to get a coach because I've done this before. I've grown this thing and felt really good about where it's at, and then watched it sort of crater on top of me as it got to a certain level of overwhelming size.
Yeah.
Um, had you did you read eMyth when you had run your mortgage business, or at some point in the interim between there, you had read it and you thought, "Oh man, this tells me all the things I did wrong the first time." Is that what drew you back then to looking
No,
to
you
them
know
for
what?
advice?
I read eMyth when I had the mortgage company, and then I started the little bit of it, and then it was like, okay, I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, this is gonna take forever. I could do it a quicker way, and so I put it aside, and I'm like, okay, I won't do it. And I think that was impatient, being in my 20s, very impatient. I was still making money, and I'm like, oh, and so that's one thing. Like I always tell entrepreneurs or people, because I come from the world, I guess, where people will say they're entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, but really they're a technician. And that's the difference. I was a technician and I still had some system. Every business has a system in place, or even technicians have a system in place, because there's no way you can work without systems. But I had my support system, like my processor, and so, but I was still a glorified technician. And I
Yeah,
assumed that I was a business owner. And so I would put a lot of the money that I made back into that. But it wasn't it wasn't a good investment for to put in, now that I look back, because I put in all this money and I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta retire one day. I gotta figure something else out. So now we're older and it's like, you know what? Let's just do things the right way. Let's be wise. Um let's have systems. What do we want to do when we're done? Do we want to sell the company? Which we do have our thoughts. We, either sell it. Do we want to pick assessors, another CE, once we grow it to where we want it, then I step down and start opening up other things and then have another, hire a CEO. Those are things you want to think about. And if you're just being a glorified technician thinking, I know it, I think a good, Tony Robinson, he said, he never did business before, because he grew up poor. And he said he learned how to build a business. And once he did that, he just was building. He just kept building and kept building and kept building. And so I would say, again, if you don't know anyone, I'm talking about really like, when I talk about building, I'm like, you have systems. Well, every business has systems, but you, from lead conversion, lead generation, marketing, leadership, those core things, finances, those core things and in place, then you probably are a glorified technician, and that's something you really want to look at, because then
Yeah,
you're
the
throwing
lesson
money away.
Yeah, the lesson I'm taking away from you is just because you own a business doesn't mean you're acting like a business owner. And in your case, you
Correct.
can reflect back on the mortgage business and say, hey, I was just someone working in the business every day, not actually building the different skills that are necessary to really scale it beyond me. So I'm curious, you had this awareness to say, I want to engage some help to help me with this. And you reached out to eMyth because that book really resonated with you. What did the E-Myth coach help you with? What things have they walked you through? What things have they helped you transform within the business?
So I know now. I know how to be how to be a CEO for a small business. I definitely know that. I it's So eMyth have the 7 cores. They have leadership, marketing, um, finances, management, client fulfillment, lead conversion, lead generation. And all those things should be working in your business. The first part with eMyth, I got into, we did the module of time management. I'm like, I already know time management. But now I can say I have reports. I know how to make decisions based off my reports, that I get to see where my business is going, where I want it to go. We have vision. I can say, I'm not always doing technician work, because the 3 things is you're doing technician, which I do technician work. Like I said, I'm a client care coordinator, but also it's management work and also entrepreneurial work. And entrepreneur is, okay, where do I want to go? What do we want to do? What's going on here? And being able to look at the whole big picture, but also zooming into those other areas in the company and where you're at and where you want to fix. And so it's kind of like taking all these Lego pieces, if you want to, per se, and they're scattered everywhere, but now you're really like building strategically of how you want this model to look, because you broke the picture out and now you're working in it, instead of a technician is someone that just do. And so
Yeah.
you know the thing is, your clients is not going to say, have you worked on your business today? No. So no one's going to ask you to do that. But as a technician, they want their job done, and that's the technician, you do the job.
Yep.
But it's so important to work on your business, and it's so important to work in your, on your business and build it that way.
So it sounds like eMyth coaches did a couple things for you. One, it created this ritual of meeting with this coach that's forcing you to ask some of these questions and work through some of these areas of the business. And second, they gave you sort of a formulaic skill building process for how to think about getting good at the important parts of running a business. Is that sort of a fair encapsulation of how they've been
Yeah,
helpful for you?
I would say, yeah, I mean, yes. And working on different modules and understanding that. Yeah.
Great. Well, I told you I was going to stick a pin and come back to this one, so I definitely want to come back to it because we have a lot of aspiring business owners that think about doing it as couples, and that's especially true as couples get into their later years, right? And they're thinking about the sort of second career. So, Janae, give us the honest truth. What's the good and the bad and the challenging and the awesome about working with your spouse? What have you learned
The
about
good, the
yourself?
bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, all of it.
Um, Honestly, it's so funny. I was talking to we were talking to our CPA for our personal finances, but and we said, look, looked at how much honestly we were paying on coaching. And so he said, well, you need to pass. I said, yes. I said, because if we sell the building business for over 2 million, we didn't made our profit and then some. It was worth it because we know what we're doing. But I said also, I said, look, I said, being a husband and wife, we need that third party person to help help us. And so he said, well, you can get a marriage counselor for that. And I'm like, no, that's not what we need. We know, like, no. So as a wife, I want to submit to my husband as unto the Lord, right? And I'm the CEO, he's the owner. He also, his other hat is a technician and a technician manager. Well, the CEO is above the technician manager, but I still, so I could say on making decisions and really have to, I don't know. It's just, again, making decisions. And if he disagrees, and I know there's healthy confrontation in a business, but learning how to not get pouty or upset because, he's your husband. I'm his wife. So it's like you're very natural with that person. But just learning how to communicate in a healthy way and not get your way, but then also help reason with someone, reason with him. And so so having a coach helps because it's like, look, I'm saying this, he's saying this is what we want to do. And it's like, she'll take that neutral thing and, and listen to both sides and then what's good for the business. The good thing is we get to, so I'm gonna go. What my husband would say is the bad thing. I was gonna go to the good thing. The bad thing is my husband would say is one of you guys, if you're a married couple, is gonna probably think, eat, drink business all the time, and I'm that one. I think about it all the time, and so he's like, "Are we talking about business again?" So I think he had to get over that, and then I had to get over. Okay, well, we're not talking about that. And then as much as you do in building a business, sometimes you're like, well, when am I going to talk to you? I need to tell you this. I need to talk to you about this, and so that would irritate me. But I think we both learning how to have conversation where it's not always business. And that's one thing. But the good thing is, like, we read a business book every day on Sundays together. Like, we're reading, one of the books we're reading is Hire. It is, oh, it's in there, but it's about hiring employees and growing them and being efficient with communication and things like that. So we're reading that. We read Culture Code together. We read Built to Last together. And so we're reading together. We're spending time together. And it's just, I think, being patient where one person is at. I think going back to those marriage skills where they say, well, if your spouse is at one level and you're at another level, you're going to be pulled. The one that's in a higher level is going to be pulled down to the lower level. You just got to be patient. And then sometimes I may think that I'm always at a higher level and he's at a lower level, and then come to realize I make a big mistake and it's like, oops, I guess he was, so you have those different things as being patient with each other. So it can be a beautiful thing. And it is, we do a lot together. And so that's the good thing. But the hard part is learning to be patient with each other. And again, in business is healthy confrontation. And I think that's one thing our society needs to understand, that we have to have conversation. We have to talk. It was a story I read in one of the books that we were reading, or I was reading, and it said that it was a company where the CEO didn't want any confrontation. And so if you came and proposed something and it's called a stir up within the meeting, he would just not talk about it. Well, what happened is they took a bloodbath on one of these new products that they put out because they did not have communication and they didn't have friction about the product. And they had to close down a division. They had to lay off so many people. And I forgot the name of that company, because they didn't have that healthy discussion. So I think you may think it's argument, and you have to learn how to respect your spouse in doing that, that friction, because you have to have it, but it's how you go about doing it. And that's the part where the learning curve comes in.
Well, I heard three things there that really resonate with me. One, Janae, is this idea that owning a business together forces you to build your skills in how to fight fair, how to manage conflict with somebody that
Mm-hmm.
you care about, which honestly sounds like business ownership for therapy, because I'm sure that skill plays out lots of other places. Second thing I heard was it's really important to set very clear boundaries for when business is going to be a part of your life and your conversation and when it's not, so that it doesn't sort of suck in everything in your life. Sounds like your husband's a good balance on that side. And then the third thing I heard from you is it's created this thing around which you both have some shared growth now. You're reading
Mm-hmm.
books, you're sort of building your own self-awareness about where you're strong and where you may have limitations. And so there's this thing that's causing you to sort of grow and evolve together. And I think that's maybe the most beautiful of all the things that you shared.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious with you said three boys, right?
Yeah. 3 boys.
Okay, so you got three boys. What has their experience been with this whole business? So they're sort of on the sidelines. It sounds like they were already graduated. I'm curious how they see and perceive what's been happening as you and your husband have grown this company.
So my youngest is 23. The oldest is 26. He's in Texas. I mean, the good news, when we had it, when he, my oldest worked for a little bit, but as far my husband had them come in and help him with things. And so my oldest wanted to do truck driving. So now I'm like, okay, he understands that you can't be a truck driver forever, because that takes a toll on your body and just a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, because he's really good at sales. I'm like, in 2 years, I want you to come back and come work with us. The middle one is he's like he works quarterly, and he's mild autistic, and so that helps. And so he has a job, and he works at Culver's too. But the middle one, I think he's more sciencey. So he's like, look, I tried to lift up a tool. I don't like it. Don't want to do it again. It's like he was little and he worked with dad one time, was like, nope, I'll stick to the books. um, so right now, I mean, they're watching as it gets off the ground, and you do have ideas of, okay, he can be this in this area, he can be that in area. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, no, I don't want them in that area, you know.
Well,
But yeah, so they're doing their thing. And
sounds like they've, each of them has taken a little turn, at least, taken a run with dad at what the business entails, whether they loved it or not. I'm curious, how do they perceive the business and what it's done for the family and for you and your husband?
my middle one, he used to sell things, and he's in science now. So I don't know, because they're in their 20s. And so to me, I think 20s is like the figuring out. And oh yeah, mom and dad wasn't as stupid as they, when they turn 30. The 20s is mom and dad, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing. And
Yeah.
so right now, yeah, right now they're doing each their own thing. The youngest one is helping us, which is good, and the middle and the oldest is, we're building something so they can come in. I would say the oldest, the middle one, if he wanted to go in marketing or whatever, he would have a place there. But yeah, we would definitely have a place for them. But
Yeah.
some of them, they would have to
So,
start off at the bottom. But yeah.
yeah, well, of course. Well, tell us a little bit about the journey from 2019. What was your assumption or belief in what the opportunity was for the business and how have things played out? Where have they played out really well? And where have they maybe surprised you and with some challenges that you've had to work through?
So, like I said, building a business is, I heard Robert Kiyosaki say that you need is a whole different skill level than being an employee.
Yes.
And it is so true. Like, what is your relationship with money? Um, and I did stocks. And so, I remember thinking, like, when my coach was like, I wanted to, because I'm an aggressive person. But I remember I'm like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. And my coach was like, well, Janae, you shouldn't. I'm like, well, why does some companies take losses and you see losses? And they're like, yeah, it's because they know, what they're doing. And so, like, I've learned, like, um, you definitely want to always create profit. Always
Yeah.
create profit. I think and I know that sounds crazy, me saying that, but you think, oh, well, I can do this and I can do that, and it's going to take a loss, but later on it's going to be a profit. And it's like, no, don't do that yet. There's time. So I think it's learning to pace yourself and learning to say, okay, this is not the time for that. I'm not in that area yet. I will be, but that needs to be on hold. This is what I want to, this is where we're at. And then we can grow from there to get to that level. And I think that was another misconception for me. It was, okay, I'm here. Now, how do I jump from here to there? And that, yeah, that kind of hurt us a little, but I wouldn't say, well, it didn't hurt us. It was when you have growing pains. That was a growing pain. That was a major growing pain for
Okay.
me.
Well, I think there's two things there. One, I think what I'm hearing is that one of the things your coach has been really helpful with is that your normal personality is just to be aggressive, go for it. Like you're willing to throw money in to try something, and you have the optimist view that it's all going to work out in the end. And your coach has really pushed you to be like, no, that's not a false choice. Like
Right.
let's think about how you might do this differently or more slowly, and or in a way where you're not taking as much risk. It sounds like that's been helpful. But you were sort of alluding to a major growing pain. So maybe we could talk specifically about the situation that happened. Like what did you believe that you sort of invested in and went down the path of, and what did you learn about yourself or the business in the process?
So, I think for me and my husband, we're looking at, okay, we need to hire more technicians, which we're always, and that's one of the reasons why the book is so well with hiring. Um, but at first, so my husband had the idea of he needs a person exactly like him, and which we would call a perfect technician. You're not going to
Yep.
find a perfect technician. So, um, you're not going to do that. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll find this person. And we really kind of we did the recruiting part and trying to figure it out. And so we hired this guy. And it's like, okay, well, we need leads, we need business. Now my whole mindset is way totally different. I understand the marketing, lead generation, I understand all that, and not throwing money and stuff that doesn't make sense. So I got it now. But at that time, it was, okay, we need leads for him. We need to just create. This is how you did it. Let's do it this way and create all these leads. And so I spent all this money for leads. And it was like, I was spending all this money. Well, the guy came in, he did some business. My husband Ken thought he was like, oh, this is an older man. He's really good and he knows what he's doing. So this is what the man sold us. But we didn't do like the things that we know now to do. We didn't do that. Like investigation. We did the drug test, background test, but it's something called investigation of asking questions. Like when you doing an interview is asking, okay, tell me of a time that this happened, and then you want specific times. Okay, who can I call to reference that? And really listen to that person. But we were just like, oh, we got someone. Okay, now let's throw money at marketing so he can have more jobs and da 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 da. And so that was a major learning lesson that did not feel good because it was like, yeah, you need to figure this out. Another thing
So
is, you get is a lot of digital marketing companies. You do want to have online presence, but they will sell you everything. And you will
Yeah.
think you have to pay all this money. And what I've learned is, okay, I need digital marketing, but right now, this is where we're going to be. And if I'm not getting as many jobs from it that they're promising, or they're saying, well, if you increase this, you'll get more. You increase this, you get more. So really understanding how to read those reports and knowing what we should get, knowing we want, know where we're at, but being okay with, okay, this is how much my budget is, because I'm not going broke trying to, because they will go, because these salespeople for leads or digital marketers, they'll sell you into, oh, if you pay this much money, you get this much leads, you get this much this. And it's like, it doesn't happen. It's like, wait, I know my business. I know
Yeah.
my customers. I know my business. I know where I need to be, and I need to make a profit. And so I think just being dogmatic and saying, you know what, we're making a profit. I'm not doing this no more. We're going to figure this out. We're going to have to, again, going back to reading, learning, understanding. Well, how do I hire someone? Because I know there's some people out there. How do I hire proper people? And when do we need to hire? And it's like, and that's what coach is saying, look, if you're looking at hiring, because that's your profit center. So if you're looking at hiring, do you have enough jobs to take care of them? And if you don't, then grow that way, and then hire them when it's time, when you're ready, knowing when to look, and having a system of when to look to say, okay, yeah, now it's time to hire.
So
So
I'm hearing three things, I think, from the lessons that you shared there. One is you've got to have a really good hiring process and have the questions to really suss out the experience. It sounds like the first person you hired sounded great, had all the right answers to the right questions, looked like the perfect technician, and did not end up being that guy in reality.
yeah,
So
no, yeah,
that's one
that
lesson
is
I heard.
very much correct.
The second lesson I heard was you originally went out and said, we're going to hire someone and then we'll create the business for them. And so you sunk a bunch of marketing expense into something. And really what you learned with that process is, hey, we need to build up the inherent demand until it necessitates us saying, hey, we got to bring in someone because this is too much work for what we currently have. And then
Right.
I think the third one you heard is, if all you're doing is talking to marketing and lead salespeople, you are going to spend a lot of money and not get good results. And so you've had to get a lot more disciplined about how many of those you test at any given time and what your expectations are. Are there anything else you did with that? Have you gone to shorter contract periods, or what are other things that you've done to really try and hone in your marketing spend to figure out what works?
Yeah, so I do which is called key indicators in marketing, and look at, I know what our area is, where our target area of how many clients is in there and how many times they buy. And I also look at, so I'm like, okay, how much money did we spend? How much what was our ROI that we got back with this company?
Yeah.
And so if I test it out, I'll test it out at the minimum, but I want to know, like, again, like I said, what's my conversion rate? What's the lead generation rate on this? And what is my ROI? And if I'm not making the profit I want to make, or that ROI I want to make, um, I don't need to deal with them. If
Yeah.
the conversion rate is not what I don't need to deal with them. I think one of the mistakes is we make is also looked at my competitor and said, well, they're with them, they're with them, they're with them, so I got to be with them. And it's like, no, that doesn't mean you got
Yeah.
to be with them.
That's a good It's a good rule of thumb. I'm curious, as you've gone through this journey with ROI, have you set a standard? Like, what's the ROI that you target, and how do you calculate it in your business?
So our goal, well, we wanted to look at the standard, what's going on in the industry. And so we looked at 18%. Um, and as you read some books in Angel, you want to hire more, but we looked at what is that ROI in our industry, and what kind of what is that going rate of people, what they want, what they get, or what's reasonable in the industry we're in.
Got it. And so for you in your industry, that's an 18% profit on any business coming from a given lead source.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it. Um, Janae, I'm curious, how has the business grown since you decided to make the double down decision in 2019?
So we're growing you know, slowly and actually, which is healthier. Actually, I've learned that and not trying to grow too fast. But we're at the place where, like I said, remember from all those Lego pieces everywhere, we are now seeing the foundation in our Lego pieces, and it's like, oh, now this is how it looks. Okay, so now let's build on that. So our foundation is, we have our systems written down. We have like, if as a client care coordinator I can replace someone in this position, I know what I need to do to replace that person. We have our systems written for recruiting, hiring, orientation, onboarding, training. Um and so it's more of where you can see this three-dimensional piece. Like if it's a building and you're building the ground, we see the whole foundation is there. And so um now we, you know, now we can take it and start building on top of that foundation. So it honestly feels so good. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. And it's like, I know it's like that aha, like, oh, okay, from frustration. And yes, I'm still getting frustrated on certain things. Like right now I'm taking a content marketing class, but it's just it's so I can't, I don't know, it's hard to explain. The only thing I can explain is the foundation is laid,
Yeah.
and I'm understanding where we want to go, knowing how to get there, and what pieces to add on to that foundation. If you're looking at the Legos everywhere, now it's that foundational piece of when you
Yeah.
first build it, and it's like, oh, you know, like a foundation to a puzzle. It's like, okay, now I know where I'm going. I know what we're doing now.
Yeah, I think reading between the lines, I think I'm hearing from you, it maybe hasn't grown as fast as you had wanted it to or expected. It's been a little slower on the growth side, but that's because you've been spending up so much effort and energy trying to fix all these things in the model that weren't clear, right? Like, how do we
Yeah.
hire the right person? What are the right marketing sources to drive things in? What are the right standard operating procedures for doing various parts of the business? So you're feeling like you've got control of the business model now, and so now the question is, how do we start to supercharge this thing? So why don't you tell us about what your sort of vision is over the next couple of years? Where are you trying to get?
So the goal for the next actually for the next 2 years is finishing up the prototype, which is, we're in Chicago. And so, like I said, we got the recruiting site. We're building up what the technician manager needs to be. And so it's adding technicians every quarter. We know where our marketing area and what we need to do for that. And so within the next 2 years is to be able to take that model, hire within, and then training other managers to go out and open other branches throughout the United States.
Got it. So how big do you expect a branch to be? Like, how big do you want to build the base one before you start now going out into other locations?
I would say with 8 technicians.
8 technicians. Great.
Yeah. Eight to
And,
10 technicians.
and how many branches are you planning to have, Janae?
One in every state. All over, all over the United States. So that would be national in every state. And yeah, in every state.
Yeah, so you got some big plans.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do actually. Like
Does
I
it
said,
give
I'm aggressive.
Yeah, does it give Kenneth a little anxiety? Is he the one in the partnership that's always kind of a little nervous about how fast things are going?
Yeah, you know, he's like, he's really good. He's so laid back. Um, but he's really good because he's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
Um he does what he knows he needs to do. As when went back to when I talked about being patient, I'm the one that's like further ahead and pushing forward. And at first it felt like, honestly, at first it felt like I was like dragging him along. But now he's like, no, he kind of understands. Like, we got our retirement in this because it's with guiding. We got this is our retirement. Like, um, and we need to take that seriously. And so like the things that he knows he needs to do, he's doing, and things I know I need to do, we do. And if we have a hard learning lesson, then we know we need to discuss it. We know how to discuss it with each other, to move forward. And so one thing we also learned too is, as an entrepreneur, the job of an entrepreneur is to read numbers and make decisions. And you're reading your reports, you can make a decision from your report instead of a vacuum in what you think and what you feel. And I think that is so very important, because you could be like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, or oh, this is not, I don't think that people will do this. I don't think this will do that. Or I hear people, business owners, say there's no one in the field that we can hire, or there's no one is hireable. Well, how do you know that? Like, where's your numbers that say that? Where's the reports that say that? Like, maybe you're looking at it wrong, and maybe you need to look and say, well, what am I doing wrong? What can we do differently? How do I need to sell a person to work here, get a good employee to work here? What are people looking for? And so I think that was the biggest thing, was just like, okay, well, when we did have our conversations, when we still have our conversations, like, okay, can you tell me what report are you getting this from? Because he'll say, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, can you tell me how this is not going to benefit? What report are you coming from? What are you looking at to make this decision? So I think that's the biggest
What
thing.
I'm hearing from you, Janae, is that there are making decisions is the most important thing you have to do as a business owner. And there's this tendency to feel like you know the right decisions, or that your assumptions are correct. And what you said you've learned is that your assumptions are not always right. And sometimes it's helpful to say, okay, here's my assumption. How do I know if that's true? Can I go to the data and find it? Or do I need to do some more discovery or exploration to find out if what I believe is really true? Because depending on if that's true or not, the ultimate decision that's the right decision for the company could be very different.
And that is correct, because the CEO, the entrepreneur, knows the vision they want to go and sets the vision, but the management has the reports, and the management person. So like with EMF, it's like you have the three people in you. You have a technician in you, have an entrepreneur in you, and you have a manager in you. You have to have reports. Like, again, going back to the marketing questions, how do I know that these companies aren't, because I had to cut off a lot of lead companies. Like, okay, I'm spending all this money, and I'm basically spending the money, the companies that I'm making money off of, I'm paying, I'm losing money at the other companies, which means I'm paying for the other companies. And I'm like, this don't make no sense. But how did I find out? I had to have my reports, and I had to go back and study my reports. I think the first 3 years is, okay, EMF taught me how to make the reports. I made my reports, but I never understood, okay, or I just felt like, okay, well, I made my reports. I didn't pay attention to them, but at least I did my reports. And now I'm understanding, oh, wait, I got to read these things. I got to see what it's telling me. I got to make decisions off of this. So I think that was the big aha moment. Like, oh, if I want to make a profit, yeah, I got to really, my reports I can do, but now I got to really read and make decisions off of what I'm getting and what I'm finding.
Yeah. Well, that is a powerful lesson learned, I think, that a lot of people could benefit from. Janae, I really appreciate you taking the time. What I love about your story is it's a story of a side business that you and your husband have decided to really try and take to the next level. And it sounds like it involves a lot of personal growth as well as business growth that you're getting to go through as a couple. So thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through a little bit of your journey, even though I recognize you're sort of midstream in this journey. You're in the middle of it. You got the Lego pieces, and now you're trying to stack them up and create this bigger vision you have for the future.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.